The first time Natalie heard about him, she was just a child, sitting cross-legged in front of the fire at her grandfather's cabin. Rain lashed the windows that night, and the trees outside creaked like old bones shifting. Her grandfather told the story in a low voice, staring into the flames. "They say he walks the woods with no face at all," he whispered. "Not covered, not hidden, just gone. Skin smooth like clay. And if you look at him, really look at him, he'll remember your face. He'll want it. And eventually he'll come take it." Natalie had laughed. A nervous, childish laugh that made her grandfather's eyes narrow. "Don't joke," he said, his voice like gravel. "That thing ain't a story. People gone missing from these woods for decades. They go in, and they don't come back. Or they do, but they ain't right. Hollow, like the thing left something inside them." That night she had trouble sleeping. The sound of the wind in the trees started to sound like whispers, like someone out there was calling her name, slow and breathless. But time passed, and like all scary stories, it faded into the background noise of childhood. Years later, after her grandfather passed away, Natalie inherited the cabin. She was in her late 20s, burnt out from the noise of city life, and thought maybe some quiet time in the woods would help her reset. She hadn't been back to the place in over a decade. The cabin was more run down than she remembered, blanketed in moss and rot, but something about it felt preserved, like it had been waiting for her. The first few days were uneventful. She read books by the fireplace, hiked the nearby trails, and drank coffee under the thick canopy of pine trees. But on the fourth night, just after midnight, she heard something strange outside, a slow, dragging sound. Not like an animal, but like boots being pulled through wet leaves. She turned off the lights and peered out the window. At first, she saw nothing, just the trees, black silhouettes against a foggy sky. But then, her eyes caught movement. A tall figure standing still at the edge of the woods, not walking, not moving, just watching. A coldness gripped her. The figure's proportions were wrong, the limbs too long, the posture too rigid. She ran to the front door and made sure it was locked. All night she lay awake, hearing nothing but the ringing silence of the forest. The next morning she convinced herself it had been a shadow, or her imagination. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her out here, alone. But then she noticed the footprints, deep, sunken prints in the wet ground outside the cabin, leading from the trees to her porch. They stopped at the front step, just feet from her door, and then vanished. No return trail, no sign of departure, like the person had just disappeared into thin air. The following night, she heard knocking, not pounding, not urgent, just slow, soft taps on the glass, like someone dragging their knuckles across the window pane, patient and deliberate. She didn't move, she didn't breathe, she lay frozen in bed, until the tapping stopped, sometime just before dawn. She tried calling the sheriff the next day, but her phone didn't have service anymore. She tried the landline, dead. Even the radio only played static no matter which frequency she turned to. Natalie drove into the small town nearby, but something was off. Half the shops were closed. The post office was abandoned. The people she passed on the street wouldn't look her in the eye. When she asked a woman at the diner about the sheriff, the woman only said, "You should leave," before nightfall, and walked away. Back at the cabin, Natalie found something waiting on her porch. A mirror. Old, cracked around the edges, but not hers. Taped to the top was a note in faded handwriting. "Don't look into the trees." That night, the knocking returned. She stayed away from the windows, clutching a fireplace poker in her hands. But around 3 a.m, the air grew colder and something changed. The knocking was no longer at the window. It was inside the house, just a single knock. Then footsteps. Slow, dragging steps across the floorboards. She held her breath and stared into the darkness of the hallway. Then, for a single, gut-wrenching second, she saw him. The man with no face. He stood in the shadows at the end of the hall, tall and still, as if he'd always been there. His skin was stretched smooth, where a face should be. No eyes, no mouth, just featureless skin, like a damp paper mask. And yet somehow, he was looking at her. She couldn't scream, couldn't move. She blinked and he was gone. But something inside her shifted that night. A coldness, a hollowness, like part of her had been pulled out and replaced with silence. The days blurred after that. Sometimes she'd wake up outside, barefoot in the woods, with no memory of how she got there. Her reflection began to change in the mirror, slightly at first. Her smile seemed wrong, her eyes dull, her features softening like they were being erased. Each night he came closer. By the end of the week, she couldn't remember her mother's face, couldn't remember her own last name. She wrote it down on paper again and again until the letters stopped making sense. And one morning, she looked in the mirror and saw nothing at all. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth, blank skin, like him. They say the cabin is empty now, but the lights still turn on some nights. If you walk near it, you might hear tapping on the glass, or footsteps in the leaves that don't belong to you. And if you ever see him, don't look, don't meet his gaze, because if he sees your face, he'll remember it, and when he wants it, he'll come take it, and no one will ever know you were here. You were here.